Joel went here with more material on the songs of the True White Brother. This particular section, which of course will be multi-parted because of the time limitations with regard to YouTube videos, is going to be called the True White Brother story. We looked at the Hopi story briefly, and of course one can go into a lot of details, and which I did not in these, but if you want to read stuff that I've set up links for, you can of course get into all kinds of details. Now we're going to take a look at the True White Brother story. Well, in a way, of course, it's still the Hopi story. The two are bound up with each other, so there will be references made during the True White Brother story back again to the prophecy and to the oral history. But it is fundamentally a different story, and it's a story that the Hopi themselves could not anticipate. Whoever it was that helped them have this prophetic sense of what was coming understood that just as there's an evolution of consciousness, which we'll talk about a little more detail as I go into this, there is an evolution of ideas. We call this, in Western civilization, we call this the history of ideas. And that history can teach us a lot if we examine it very carefully. It's a kind of mirror of the evolution of consciousness, for example, if we understand the history of ideas. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as part of what we do. But it's also important to realize that the True White Brother story is similar in a certain way to certain aspects of the Hopi story, which is that the True White Brother story comes from meetings with the Creator. It's not just an invention of a human being. The Hopi oral history talks about the times that they meet the Creator and what those meetings are like. And I must confess here that I've had such meetings, and people I'm going to talk to or about have had such meetings, and lots of people are having such meetings. And this is part of what makes the True White Brother part an aspect of the Hopi prophecy, which is the fact that the divine can once more be met by human beings and influence human beings depending on their approach to the situation. And of course, in the scientific age, as I stressed earlier, this is being done very carefully. This is being done with a certain precision and exactness because it's a different time. And in fact, the consciousness of human beings has evolved. Now, telling this story, it's not really going to be about me. It's really going to be about you. This is a story about you, about your way of life. But in order to understand that, we're going to have to go into a lot of sort of subsidiary material. But just to give you a sense of sort of an underlying fact that can be understood, and it's understood in part from meeting the Creator. And this is the fact that, you know, when we hear stories about the world, for example, in the media, when we're told the news of the world, when we go to our schools of education and we have the world described to us, and we have all the ideas about the world, we have certain things that we call history, and we talk about history and great men and great ideas and Darwinian evolution and the founders of America and all these stories of the history of the world. And in fact, from the point of view of the divine mystery, all of those stories about the world are a description of the stage setting. The playwright Shakespeare, who was a very wise human being, said all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. And that's sort of a part of a truth. The fact is that what goes on in Afghanistan, what goes on in Washington, D.C., what goes on in all these places that are troubling, this is the background of the stage. This is the stage setting in which the most important thing that goes on is the individual biography. You could say that the love of the divine mystery is directed right at the individual biography, and that's the most important thing that goes on in the present, and will be going on as we enter into the time of what the Hopi called the Day of Purification. This is all about you. This is about your life. This is about you understanding your life, and about you understanding the powers that you possess for understanding and living your life. Our individual lives have tremendous meaning because they are formed out of the love of the Creator, and this is the central mystery we're going to get into, but it's a complicated thing. Couple of sort of background ideas in the beginning here. I've only got a couple minutes before I have to shut down and start up again, but let's try this one idea. Some of you will understand what distributed computing is. And distributed computing, if you don't understand this idea, basically is that you go online and you can have a connection formed between your computer and a central axis or hub, and this hub will be joined by millions of computers, and through the hub problems will try to be solved with the computing process distributed across all of these hubs, all of these individual computers, and organized by a single hub. We have something similar today in human existence. It's a little bit more dramatic in a certain kind of way, and we'll get into it a little bit over the period of time of these stories of the story of the true white brother from my individual point of view. And you could say that an apt way to describe wisdom in the world is that it's distributed. You're not going to find it in me. You're not going to find it in Rudolf Steiner. You'll find the best parts of it in yourself. You'll find that you're surrounded by it if you start to wake up to it. Wisdom is distributed. It's everywhere. It's available to all of us. We just have to be willing to admit it into our lives and become conscious of it. The world is built in part out of wisdom and out of love, and these are hard things to understand when we get to the problem of evil, which we will come to. We will face the problem of evil, and we will talk about it and come to understand it, because it's not outside of the creation. Evil is inside the creation and serves a purpose.